So we're here today with Colin Grams and Kylie May and myself, Alexa. Today we're going to be talking about Love Builds the Bundle, which is an amazing toolkit that has been created by Anwa. We have no structure. We're just going to talk about whatever it is that comes to mind. We have two experts here in the room, and we want to be able to share this knowledge and have this especially be useful for young Indigenous people who are in the LGBTQ community. So first we'll start off with introductions. Maybe we'll start.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know me out there in the lands of the virtual world, it's how we're starting Monday. My name is Colin Double L Graham, just like the cracker, and I am one of the managers. You've never heard my introduction?
No!
I love it. Yeah, so I've been with Anwa now for 7 years. And no, I lied. 8 years now, and I'm really excited to have made a switch over in my department in community development from working in community safety, and now I work as the training manager. And why that's exciting is I get to develop and create based off of all my work life experiences, and it's been wonderful to share the collective knowledge that I received over my career and to share it with young people.
Right on.
Sego Serbrego, Galandora Yungets, Kanyakahaga, Niwagamanjoda, Danga Atnawana Niwagidaloda, Gina Jandakwa Oswego Nidawagano. Hi everybody, my Mohawk name is Galandodo. I'm Mohawk Turtle Clan from Six Nations of the Grand River Territory in Haudenosaunee. And my English name is Kylie May. I'm the project coordinator for Love Builds the Bundle, which is a partnership between Anwa and Ganakrashra on Six Nations. And I'm so excited to be to have been welcomed onto this project to do so much good work for youth, but just bringing awareness, lived experience, and Indigenous lived experience to a program like this to help, really just to help support and be there for the youth. We'll get more into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for folks wondering why I am here in this room, Buju, Masabe Kwe, Dishmakas, Makwando Dam, Bishnabe Saki, Nishnabe Kandoji, Nishnabe Kwe, and Dao. So my name is Alexa. I am a family physician. I work with the Mindamoya Health Clinic, and I'm a part of our team, especially we do specific programming called Gender Journeys, so I help with the medical portions of that. So I've been a family doctor now for 3 years. I know, that's really wild to think. So I've been a family doctor for 3 years, and so a lot of my curriculum training in medical school and medical training did not really include a lot about hormones, mental health, gender affirming care, trans care. So that's information that I had to go and seek out myself at specialized clinics to learn about and to essentially be able to practice and have this available for our Indigenous youth, because they're really, as we know, medical care can be really daunting. It can be really harmful, especially for people in our trans community. And so my goal was essentially to be someone that had information. I'm not an expert by any means, but yeah, I do the best I can. I try and incorporate traditional medicines in how I see health. And yeah, I'm from the Bear Clan, I'm from Rocky Bay First Nation, and I'm also very happy to be here. Before we came out to the screen, we had so many anti-witch cackles that you didn't hear, and you might continue to hear, but we're going to try and reel it in and keep it focused on the bundle today. The bundle. The bundle. Speaking of, so let's start with that. So how did we even get here? How did this project even start? What was the need? How did it start? Where did it start?
Oh my gosh, well, geez. I want to say it started a couple years ago, back when, I was sitting on the edge of a mountain, and the sky was gray with clouds, and they opened up with a beam of light coming down on my meditation. No,
I was like,
could you imagine?
was this the real version?
Right? Could you imagine if every story started out like that? No.
Every
So,
project that's
Every project that started on a mountain with the beam shining. Stop.
so I think what's really important for me, like when we're talking about the history of this project, it started back in the middle of the pandemic, and it started in the middle of the pandemic when things were still in lockdown, and although we all went through that experience together, but in that experience, I think the pandemic really shone light on the big gaps that were prevalent throughout our world, but more importantly around access to care for trans but also two-spirit people accessing care, as well as resources. So in that time we put in a proposal. Oh, sorry, I'm like, it's just very busy all of a sudden.
We put in a proposal.
Oh, thank you. We put in a proposal, and the proposal was for creating a toolkit through the Ministry of Education. And go into this proposal based off of our relationships, not only with trans youth, but two-spirit youth, and more specifically, two-spirit girls. There's a lot of conversation in the two-spirit community as to access and services, and I think I've heard you speak before about Indigenous people, more specifically two-spirit people, having that added layer of vulnerability around HIV/AIDS, right? So I did that work for about 15 years, and so a big part of that conversation was always around two-spirit men, with lack of resources for two-spirit girls and women. So we sat with this, attaining the funds to do this work, and we were really thoughtful as to do this in a way that was not only meaningful, but for Onwa and making sure that we were able to give something back to community, but we really wanted to be meaningful for community. So we did so with a thoughtful process of Onwa's best practices of how we do that work, and that would be through community engagement. And we did that engagement by seeking out the voices of young two-spirit people that were already living and walking in this world, or navigating through this world, and we wanted to know what was working, what wasn't working, and we were really comprehensive with our engagements, right across the province, both south, north. We were very thoughtful even around our questions, and not to be coming across as something that was extractive. So we did so in a way that was community conversations. I hate using the word engagement because it comes across as very clinical. It really can. So we were really mindful of how, not only how we developed our questions, but how we delivered them. And so we learned really quick that it needed to be community conversations. And from there, they guided us in the work. They guided us in what they would want, because we wanted to make sure when we did this work, it wasn't going to be done through a prescriptive lens. And that's really key and vital when it comes to engaging and working with community. The way I tell myself, and I tell my team, or anyone I get to work with in community development, is, I get nervous when with language. For example, experts, right? Or the pro, or this, and I like to think of myself in a way that I'm nothing more than a conduit of change. Right? Working in community, being in service to community, is about being a conduit of change, that doorway of an opportunity for growth, not necessarily for me or my agency, but for the people that are coming to us looking for help, coming looking for services. So we were able to really take what community had to say, collate it or gather it, really go through it as analytically as we could, but maintaining the community voice. And we put together and built Love Builds the Bundle.
It's so good.
Yeah, and I've a lot of things. This is one of the projects that will always forever remain on a top shelf in my heart around my career, because it was so there's a big part of myself in it from my own experiences growing up the way I have. So in this journey, we got to meet Kylie May in the development. After we created everything, we went to second phase because originally this was just a project. And from that project, after we had finished, we presented it back to our funders because it was a year and a half, no, the way the funding works, it's not a full 2 years. And so they really liked it, and they continued to fund it for 2 more years.
Good job.
2 more years. They invested 2 more years recognizing what we were doing, what we were creating, so from there we got to develop a phase 2, and that's how we met Kylie May.
Yeah.
And so I'll let you.
Yeah, sure. I would like to know at one point how exactly like a Good Orchestra got involved. So I mentioned I'm from Six Nations, and we have the Good Orchestra Family Assault Support Services, and I work at our Jijungo Daja Atnola Lasane, which is your home on Turtle Island. It's our youth lodge. And it's there that I had my office. So I joined, so before I showed up in the program, there were some people working on it at Good Orchestra before me, like Nathan Abbey, Summer Jacobs. People were getting the project started, and when I joined, it was just the end of the, I guess the what do you call it? Like pilot period, I guess, the pilot period. And then we submitted, and then we were hoping that we would get funding, and then we were told we got the funding approved, and then they offered me the role, so I'm now the project coordinator of it, working with ANWA. Yeah, and I think it's so like fundamental because, so I am Two-Spirit, I'm trans, I'm queer. I grew up on Six Nations, and I moved to Toronto in 2007. I was there for 17 years. I went there for school, and that's when I like discovered my gender and sexual identity. I just became myself there. But that's where I got immersed in like community activism. I started doing like education awareness and public speaking. So I have quite a bit of a history with doing like education work, activism work around Indigenous people, LGBTQ people, and then I found like the Two-Spirit community in Toronto. Shout out to Two-Spirit People of First Nations organization. Yeah, so it was there that I sort of, developed my educational identity. It's when I fell in love with wanting to really just help people understand. That's all it came down to for me was building empathy and compassion and understanding. So when the opportunity came up for this role, it all just coincided. Everything just worked out because I had just moved back home to Six Nations from the reserve, and this job became available. And I feel like I've been reflecting on my role, and I kind of feel like I have been preparing my whole life for this role in my community on Six Nations.
Yeah.
Because I've been on this full journey where I like left for reasons.
Yeah.
And became myself, discovered myself, and now I'm bringing everything back home to my community where it started. And I'm just trying my best to put all my energy and investing into change so that our younger generations coming behind me don't have to go through what I went through. And I just want the path easier to walk. What's the saying that those who came before us walked so we could run. Well, I want those who come after us just to dance, just to just prancing down that pathway. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be working on this project, and similar to what Colin said, like I'm new to the project, but it means so much to me. It's so important. It's like my baby. It's like my heart is in it. So I'm really excited for the opportunity, and through this I got to meet all these amazing people that I know.
Yes. I mean, and you can really feel that in Love is the Bundle though. Like even for folks who don't know, we're going to post a link to our website that has all of this information and what it is that we're referring to, and we'll talk about what's in it. But that's definitely the embodied feeling even when I was going through it, I was just like, wow, this is very, very different than a toolkit, than like just a presentation. It was lived experience that was wrapped up into something that could be tangible tangible and that you felt, like you feel in your heart when you're actually reading everything that we've written, like what it means when you're coming back into the circle or you're coming out, how we define things, language, all of these things, that topics that really aren't well understood and not really talked about.
Yeah, and also that highlights the importance of the person, I guess, who's like delivering the knowledge or the program. Because before I was in the role, they did want somebody who was Indigenous or preferably with like res lived experience. And there were some like challenges with finding the right person for the role, but I just want to shout out like my coworker Nathan Abbey, who had the role before me. He's a white man, and he actually stepped aside and created space for me, and he said that it was more right to have me in the role. And since reflecting on it and being in my community and presenting to my people, it makes a huge difference to have somebody from your community who grew up in the res, who knows what it's like to like bring this awareness to our people. Because if you have somebody who's like an outsider or somebody who's like a white male delivering this kind of content, it can kind of be a disconnect. So I'm seeing now the value in what it's like to have, you know, you can relate to people. You know, they can understand you. You have this kind of the same lived experience, so it makes a huge difference.
I completely understand that, because especially with my role in medicine, I think why Indigenous providers are so crucial for Indigenous patients, because you see yourself reflected.
Yes.
And that is so powerful when you're in situations or you're in systems or institutions that are meant to harm. And then you see that person, and that's your connection point of, this is, I see you in me, and then having that connect. And that sounds like that's kind of what you're describing, of like, this is my part of my experience, this is how I want it to be taken in, this is what I want for people to know, and then also to reflect back to people, like even how you look, your skin color, like all of these things. You actually need to see, like I sometimes joke, like, you know, you need to see nativeness in the room, otherwise you're just like,
Yes, when it comes to representation, the optics are important.
Yeah, no, they are, absolutely, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So, so this is how we got to the bundle. So we have these amazing folks that are working with us. What's included? Like, what's available? What information did you want to prioritize when you were building this bundle? Like, what is specifically, are there parts of it that like are your favorite? Because we're gonna be, folks can just take a look online as to what it is that we're talking about. But it includes a lot of information. But I just wonder, were there parts that were like, that stand out to you in terms of what's actually in the bundle?
For sure. Well, there's a lot, as you said earlier. It is much more than just like a workshop or a presentation or even a toolkit. Well, first of all, so the project is called Love Builds the Bundle, and currently at Guna Krusha we are trying to, well, I've been in contact with language speakers, like fluent language speakers, so we're finding a name for the project in the language.
Wonderful.
So probably Cayuga, but also Mohawk, like I'm Mohawk. So at Guna Krusha we have our program names in the language, and we encourage the use of that. So soon we will have a like an Ungwehoe name for it, but right now it's called Love Builds the Bundle. And when I first found out about it, I knew it was really comprehensive, because what was a service delivery agreement between Anwa and Guna Krusha specifically. It was like for missing and murdered Indigenous people, but also like two-spirit people. So that was a big thing for me, and I saw like an investment, and like people actually wanted this, and what I felt was that it was needed. So many people expressed the need for it, and talking to like in networking, engaging, and talking to other agencies, or I find there is a high demand for it. I think my favorite part for me is the toolkit that we created. We wanted it to be very like practical and useful and interactive and engaging, because I've been on both sides of like safe space training, sensitivity trainings. We've all been there, and one thing we were adamant about was not wanting to create, they wanted it to be in the framework of our safer spaces, but we wanted to go above and beyond. So the name we came up for our training at Gannett Russia was actionable accountability training, because it's so much more than just sitting there and absorbing information. We're actually giving people the tools and the strategies and advice on how to actually help people. So it's a full day training. There are many parts to it, but I think the thing that stands out most is I didn't want it to be very academic and theoretical, because sometimes, when you're in like queer education spaces, it can be very very high level.
What are you even saying? Just say the words.
Yes, very academic. I've seen the disconnect between that academic space speaking down to a community, and there's it just doesn't work. So I wanted it to be very useful, practical, something people could actually take and apply in their lives, as opposed to just concepts or ideas. So I've gotten a lot of great feedback about that. But for me personally, the biggest thing is the fact that I'm doing this in my community on my reserve. I mentioned when I did this training for the first time in front of a room full of my coworkers at Gannett Russia, it just hit me so different. Because I've been speaking in Toronto, I've spoken to groups, literally auditoriums
Thousands of people
at Pride, crowds filled with strangers I don't know.
Yeah.
And I can say what needs to be said. But being on my land, in my community, in a room full of people I knew my whole life, people I went to high school with, it hits different. And that's my favorite part of it, is that I'm doing it in my community. And there was a time in my life I never ever thought I'd be doing this. I hung up a pride flag during our last pride in Oshwegan. Never thought I'd ever do that. So here I am doing important work in my community, and that for me is the highlight.
Yeah, wonderful. What about you, Tom?
Oh, for me, I think I don't have just one favorite part. If there's something I can think about when it comes to Love Builds the Bundle, is that the entire toolkit, in its entirety, there's multiple layers, right? I think for me, one of those favorite layers, or one of those favorite parts, is how we created it. It was created in a way that, even though it's written, it is written in a way that the toolkit itself is a living toolkit.
Yeah.
And what I mean by it's a living toolkit is that it is flexible, it's adaptable to the emerging trends in which a community is experiencing. So in order for this toolkit to continue on, to continue to grow, to continue to build the momentum of people stepping into their power, it needs the continued contribution from community members, such as from the 2S community. It requires that voice. And Kylie, you hit the head right on the nail. The way it was written was, I like talking in stories rather than just talking. So when I started my career, oh my God, I can't believe it, 28 years ago. Oh my God! And it's terrifying to say that out loud like that. Oh my God, I didn't realize I've been around that long. But
That's almost how old I am.
Is it really? You're almost 28?
I'm 29. You've been working for as long as I've been alive. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to just I'm so sorry. I heard your heart. I could tell immediately. I'm so sorry.
You gave me a mental image of me stepping into my career in community development 28 years ago, holding a baby, fighting your community.
Move out the way.
So you're welcome, Dr. Alexa.
You wouldn't be here without
Facts.
So yeah, no, where I'm going with that though is, but yeah, you are welcome though.
Okay. Thank you. Pretty much.
No, so going back that far is there wasn't a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of opportunities being Indigenous and doing community work. We didn't have all of the services, all the Indigenous services that we do today.
Yeah.
And, you know, getting into these spaces was very difficult. And when you were in those spaces, it was incredibly difficult to have clout behind your voice at the table.
Yeah.
And so for me, being another layer, the layer of two-spirit, and I use quotes and I'll get to that later on, is it was even harder, right? And I found that there was a lot of, not infighting, but just even within our own community, there was another barrier. So for me, Love Builds the Bundle is about creating those opportunities. It's about creating those spaces for young people and young facilitators and that new generation of voice coming up, like Kylie May. It's about creating a stepping stone where we can create those pockets of opportunities for those voices to come into their power, to step into their power, become confident in that voice, become confident in what their skills and their story is and how much power is in that, right? And Love Builds the Bundle is written in a way that we want and we need, and it's designed for two-spirit newcomers to be those facilitators, to come into their own, to be able to build themselves up in a way that recognize that they themselves are a leader. Not only are they are a leader, but they have a very vital and important role and voice that is needed back at the table of Indigenous governance. As historically, prior to contact, we had always been at the table when it came to decisions and leadership. And so we created this Love Builds the Bundle, and I think that to me is my favorite part of the overall project. What else is important to me about Love Builds the Bundle is not just what we just talked about, finding your voice, but is that it's rooted in culture. And yes, we wrote it with Ganakwisha, and it didn't have its challenges. It had its opportunity for two amazing nations to come together, sit in a room, and really talk about our own worldviews and how we can collaboratively come together with two very different worldviews and find common ground. And it was, when we did this in a room in Niagara, which has historically been a gathering space, right? And so here we are, hundreds of years after first contact, two nations coming together at this waterfall. And, contrary to the belief of how people might see the Ojibwe and the Haudenosaunee, we literally came together, both with our worldviews, both confident in our worldview, but there was no conflict. Instead, we sat together and we created, in one day, we created the entire outline for this project. And in one day, we realized how to write this, and it wasn't one way was the right way and the other wasn't. That's what I mean by living toolkit again, is it collaboratively came together to be able to, regardless of what nation you are, Inuit, Métis, Cree, as the content is written in a way so that you can insert your own cultural beliefs, worldview, teachings, tradition. It's very comprehensive. It's not just a westernized way of giving out and sending out the message. It's inclusive of all aspects of a person and what makes us individual and unique. But more importantly, it's rooted in culture. And culture is, in my opinion,
So it made the difference.
it does. That's exactly what it does. It makes the biggest difference. It re-establishes how important we are as individuals, regardless of however we identify. It builds us up in a way that not only to step into our power, but to be proud of that individual spark that makes us who we are, to be able to share those beautiful internal gifts with our community.
Yes.
So that's what we're looking for. We're looking to build leaders.
Oh my gosh, my heart! I'm just like trying not to cry. Moving on. And that is wow. Even just you can see it in the way that you two speak about, and just how impactful this project really is.
Yeah, and something we like that I want to highlight is like the toolkit is we incorporate like cultural specific teachings to our best of our ability. As Colin said, like wherever you are, like geographically across Turtle Island, it is like basically like a template or a blueprint with which you can insert your own like local geographical knowledge with your elders on your land. So it is a very collaborative thing. We do incorporate, for example, our Haudenosaunee teachings on Six Nations, like just values that we have, like, peacefulness, like having a good mind, conducting yourself in a good way. And I think that's very validating because a point to make that I've learned being in the city and being on the res is some people in like indigenous communities or res communities think that like gayness is like an outside thing that happens in the outside world.
That's the city.
That it's not us, but it is us. So I like delivering this content and this toolkit with all of those aspects to it that are traditional and cultural, that are very validating, because it sends a message to indigenous queer people, indigenous LGBTQ or Two-Spirit, however you want to identify, that you belong here, that you are part of your culture, and that they're not mutually exclusive.
Absolutely.
You can still be Haudenosaunee and still be as gay as you want to be. They're not, they're linked, they're together. And the other aspect of it was, what I love about it is a lot of projects like this, and I've seen other similar toolkits to like what we're doing, but it often seems sometimes it's just like it's a pilot project, it's a one-off thing, and it gets delivered. It's like somebody's research study for school, they release it and it's amazing, but like 2 years later it's outdated and they just post it on the internet, then it just dies. And there's a lot of amazing information in there, even some from like 2012, even some from like 5 years ago. Amazing information, but it's almost like it's just put out there and then it's just left to
Here you go.
wither away, and then it gets forgotten about. But our goal with our toolkit, as far as I understand, is keeping it alive so that people can continue to contribute to it, that it's updated, that it's always going to be there, and hopefully will always be relevant for the times we're living in.
I love that, and I love that you recognize that. So I'll tell you another little story. Okay, ready? So back in the day, like picture it,
There were teepees in the background.
2001. A young, fit, Two-Spirit with tight, gorgeous skin man walks through the
Not using Botox.
I was an urban kid. I was an urban kid, and I was not understanding myself in the world, because who does understand themselves in the world, right? 19. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out who I am, trying to get connected to things. No one talked. I didn't know what Two-Spirit was then. We weren't really using that language, because that was coined back in 1996 out of Manitoba. And I love the fact that it came from there, and I'm glad that Two-Spirit exists. But for me, language is important. Language is so important, and I think about how Two-Spirit serves a place as a placeholder, and it's important about that entry point of what we're looking for. But I was lucky enough to always know that a different word, even before Two-Spirit existed, and that was a Gokwe and a Gokwe Nini. And those are words, though, that no one really talked about. No one, I knew they existed, but they were hush-hush, right? And so when I think about love builds the bundle, I think about my experiences as a young person who didn't have access to a lot of that knowledge, and that throughout my career, throughout my life experiences, I've been fortunate enough to meet different Ogokwe Nini, Berdash, from out. I met all sorts of different Two-Spirit people of Turtle Island, and actually the globe, and I've been able to sit with them individually. Some have passed on, and for me, what keeps their legacy alive is this work. And what I mean by that is I came in to this field at a young age, maybe with a slice of pie, is the best way to describe it. I had a slice of pie. I knew this much of the world. And because of each of the mentors I've met over my life, both Gokwe Nini or Two-Spirit, trans community, is they would give me a slice of their pie, and a slice of their pie, and a slice of their pie. And the pie is not complete by all means yet, but it gave me the thought process to understand and know not only that we matter, that we hold importance in community, but that our voice is needed. It also taught me that culture, our culture, exists. It tells me our teachings exist. And it's my role in this, not just career, but in my life, is to get this information. Not to keep it, I want to share. But I want to get as much of the pie as I can filled up, so I can have it, so that we can all share this together. I want us to, I'm going to continue meeting and sitting with the Two-Spirit or the Gokwe elders until we have a fulsome idea of not just culture, but our ceremonies, our roles and responsibilities, the tradition that comes with being a Gokwe or Gokwe Nini. And then use that for those young people to not just sit with their little sliver of pie. I want to be able to say,
here's the whole damn cake.
Here's the whole thing. Run with it. Because if it took me this long to finally come into my power, I'm like, I'm just going to tell the people I'm 28, 28 years in. Can you imagine what it's like, what it would be like for a young person, a 14, a 13-year-old, to be able to see that they belong, that they matter, that there's representation, for them to be able to grow in their own natural gifts. What kind of society would we have if we allowed for our children to naturally grow in their inherited gifts that they come from the star world with? Who will they become? Right? So I'm excited.
Wow. And even just I think of who would they become, and from my perspective, how their health trajectory would change. Because you see in our community, like not a lot of trans Two-Spirit Ogokwe Nene people actually live long enough lives to become elders because we're dying. And I think that when I hear you say that, when I think of 13, 14-year-old Indigenous patients that are in front of me in the clinic, you know, and their community is welcoming to them. Their community is open. It's not mutually exclusive. They get to be Ongohonge and Haudenosaunee, and they get to be who they are. And that those the two things aren't mutually exclusive. It makes an impact in their healthcare, like a lot. And in terms of like suicide rates, in terms of like just everything, like it changes your whole health trajectory of actually being able to live a healthy life, to live long enough to actually become an elder.
Absolutely. And I think there's something to be said, like there's like acceptance, but then there's like having your purpose in place within your culture and community. It's because sometimes I feel like on our reserves, it's like, but I'm speaking from like Six Nations, like the way it used to be. Things have changed a lot. Things are much more welcoming and accepting. People are much more aware, but I think there was a time for myself, like in my community, my family, like when I came out, it was sort of like tolerated. You know, people just like
you were there.
put up with it. And there's a difference between being tolerated and being accepted and being celebrated. And I think for Two-Spirit people or indigenous queer people, it's not only being recognized, but being welcomed into like our social roles within. Because it gives you so much more purpose than to just say like, we're cool with you, but it's like opening up the door and saying you have a spot beside us in my house, or you have a spot beside us in lodge or wherever. It's like you deserve to be here because you're meant to be here.
Yeah, I like talking in story. We've caught on. Another story. I remember coming out, and I know I'm so proud when I hear the stories of young kids coming out, knowing who they are at 13, 14. They know, right? And I'm like, well, and I knew too, but we didn't have those spaces to be able to.
Where are you gonna be there?
Right?
Yeah.
I remember coming out, I must have been about 19 or 20, which is such a funny thing to say. I mean, come on. Every time I open my mouth, a purse falls out, right? Like, ha. So I'm like, I don't know who the hell I was fooling, but I was fooling people. But the story I'll share with you with that now, knowing I didn't come out till I was an adult, a young adult, but an adult nonetheless. I remember I came out to my mom first. And I thought of every possible scenario, how this is going to turn out. Because I watched Jerry Springer. I freaking knew. I knew it happened. When they say, who they are, when people claim that space, I know what comes flying at you: a chair, a fist, slurs. So I had in my head every possible scenario as to how my coming out would be with my mother. And this isn't everybody's story, but I'm fortunate and blessed in this life that it was mine. Of all the things my mother said to me was the one thing I was not prepared for. And her words to me were, "I'm so glad you can finally be happy." In that, being 19, tuck that away, it's a memory. It felt good. It felt good to hear that. And she, gave me a big hug and told me how much she loved me. Right? But that was my experience. And I know that that's not everybody's. Now, fast forward, I don't know, 6 months to this age I am.
Oh my God, pause! I'm crying out of goosebumps. I'm like, wait! I'm not ready for the story. Okay,
right?
keep going.
That, again, is the intention of Love Builds the Bundle. I think Love Builds the Bundle is not only a love letter to my mom, but a love letter to the parents that stand by holding space for their children. It's a way of letting those children know that they're seen, they're heard, but more importantly, I'm so glad you can finally be happy now and step into your power. And I think that's why this particular project of my entire 28 years is so meaningful to me, because there's such a big part of, when I say a big part of me, it's not just my mind, it's not just my experiences, but the things that I'm most proud about being in Ogokwe. And some of that is parts of my mom's story, which I say, when Love Builds the Bundle, I want it to be something that I think about it. When I think about this project, when I think about this toolkit, when I think about the knowledge in it, I wanted it to be the same embrace my mom gave me when I came out. Are you okay?
Oh my gosh, okay, that's slightly different than when I told my mom. My mom did not say, "I'm so glad you can finally be happy." I told my mom on the phone and I came out. It was like not the right opportune time, or whatever. And then I told her, and there was silence. And then she says, "Well, I'm shocked, but I'm not surprised."
Yeah.
And then she was like, oh no, what are your like siblings gonna think? What's your older brother and your sister gonna think? And she told them, and they're like, duh.
We actually knew this a long
I
time
was
ago.
like, you're the one in denial, mom. I'm just kidding. No, but I think that's also the kind of reception that I want younger people to also go through. Because in my time, just like living out as a public figure, being two-spirit, I've had people come to me, confide in me, tell me their stories. And I remember this one time, this mother came to me and she was kind of concerned, and she's like, I want to talk to you about my son. She had somehow like discovered, I don't know how she discovered on his phone like this erotic gay image. And she's like, I think my son's gay. And she's like, what do I do? What should I do? And I'm like it needed some sort of intervention. And I was like, nothing. Love him the same way you were before. Like it makes, it makes no difference. So I do feel times, have definitely improved from when I was like a young teen growing up, being bullied on the res to now. It's just, it gives me a lot of hope, but that's where I situate myself, and what motivates me is giving that opportunity to the younger ones coming before me or after me to like, because I wonder sometimes, where would I be if I got what I needed when I was a child? Because I kind of like, I was questioning things when I was a child, but we didn't have the language, we didn't have the acceptance, we didn't have the space like to talk about it, yet alone to like understand what we were going through. But I think like, where would I be today if my parents and my community were just like, yes, let you be you and just flourish and thrive, So that's the opportunity I want for young people, is to just have their chance to be their genuine selves without interruption and just thrive and become, because we are gifts. Like two-spirit people are very gifted, and I want people to be able to see that. And I think it's happening, because there's people out on my reserve living like openly gay or like trans. There's young like younger trans youth who I know. And one time, like a few years ago, when I was still living in the city, still living in Toronto, my best friend messaged me, and she sent me a message, and I think it was like a parade, or it was during like fair time in Oswego, and there was like this people gathered, and it was a picture of this little boy wearing a dress out in public, and his family just like accepted them. Like I'm guessing they're like young two-spirit child, and that family just accepted it. And my best friend said, this is because of you and all the work you've been doing in our community that allowed this to happen. And that just like, so it makes it all worth it. And that's really what motivates me, is just giving those children and those youth that opportunity to give them what they need, which is really just love. Love builds the bundle. So.
And it just sounds so simple, right? It just sounds so like, just love people,
right?
But then that's not actually what happens. I wanted to go back to your point about how you had this internal sense of knowing, of like how I see myself is not really what's happening right now in my body. And often this misconception that I hear patients' parents saying or thinking is that, well, like, you're too young to know that. Like, how would you even know that? Like, you're still just young. And medically, that's actually false. You start to build your sense of identity at the age of 3, cognitively in your brain. That's actually, so for people to be like, you wouldn't know, how would you know as young as 3? And
right.
Because your brain actually functions that way.
Yes, that's a question I get, like in the training I did, like people wanted to know, they asked me, and like Nathan was one of the presenters, his gay, and the question was like, when did you know that you were like gay or trans? And I halted the question, and I was like, I'm just gonna flip this question back over to all of you in the room. When did you know you were straight? When did you know you were a girl or a boy? Very young. You had your sense, as you said, of who you are in relation to others at a young age. So if we just like accept and normalize like heterosexual cisgender people as just becoming themselves without question. Why can't we apply that same? It's almost like people plant doubt in the minds of people. Even like when I had my surgery, like my bottom surgery, people were being like, "Are you sure it's a very serious decision? You can't reverse it. Are you sure it's just a phase?" I'm like, no, it's really not. So hopefully the work that we do does combat those kind of, attitudes. But
that are like actually just like they're just not correct. So like I think that's like, I mean, they're harmful in thinking that, because we don't plant the seeds of doubt in anyone else's mind. But that children are more connected and have more inherent knowledge than we do as adults in terms of who their identity is becoming, and that's formed very early. Like it really is. In terms of, so you're mentioning about like surgery and like how that so how did things, so you were in the community, moved away, kind of got your bearings, was able to be accepted in a community, then able to come home to your community.
Correct.
What, in terms of your medical journey, is like, did you have to go through in order to be who you are today, in order to come into yourself? So you mentioned some stuff about surgeries. Was there hormones? Like, what was your experience with healthcare providers? Bad, good? Like, what did all of that entail?
Right, so I was quite fortunate because I was in Toronto, and that's when it comes to like trans health and like LGBTQ healthcare, it's a little more advanced. So I was fortunate in that way that I had access to those services and in a city where I could access those services. But it was through like programming, and actually it was through Gender Journeys. I was in a Gender Journeys program.
I am a graduate alumni of Gender Journeys.
Yes, I am. So this was at the Sherbourne Health Center in downtown Toronto. So they have LGBTQ healthcare. They have like queer informed practice. They even have a trans doctor, which is awesome. And like trans counselors. So there were various programs for youth, like youth drop-ins, but they had a program called Gender Journeys for people who were questioning or considering transitioning. And I took that program, and it was so comprehensive. It was an 8-week, I feel like it was longer, like 12 weeks, but it really changed my life because it was a very like legitimizing, validating experience, knowing like it was so educational, walked through me and all of our people through the steps, and it was really the sense of sisterhood and community and being there literally in a room filled with people just like you, guiding you through the journey and having a sense of mentorship, because knowing that there were elders who went through it before you and then giving you all of the information so that you can make fully informed decisions. So that's how I became aware of the process, like how to see a doctor, start hormones, apply, like even everything. They teach us forms, like how to apply, where to go, like how to change your ID, everything. We need it in a very supportive environment. And I think if I didn't have that, it can be very overwhelming, frustrating, confusing, maybe discouraging to not, like you don't know where to go. Like if you don't have someone telling you what to do and where to go, it's just like you're left sort of flailing, and you don't know what to do. So that was one thing I was really fortunate for. So I followed like the protocols we do, in Ontario. So I had applied. I went to a gender clinic at CAMH, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, and I went through the whole process, got evaluated, then I started hormones, and I had bottom surgery and top surgery. So that was my journey, and it was made easier by the fact that I had access to the educational resources, but more than anything, having that trans sisterhood, because before I had surgery, there were trans women that I knew who went through the same process with the same surgeon in Montreal. So they helped with like what to expect. Like even we had this like bond where it's like we're gonna tell you everything. So they showed me pictures, like graphic, everything to prepare me. And I so loved that. And I even joined a group online. It was a Facebook group for people specifically who were having surgery in Montreal. So it was like this amazing shared community. It was a safe space. We could go there, ask questions, help each other out, give each other advice, recommendations, like even just emotional support, mental support. So I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to have had all of that and to be able, to have that, the privilege of, I guess, help and understanding. And then I then passed the torch because after I went through my process, there were young trans women who came to me and I did the exact same thing. And I sat them down, we had meetings. I'm like, listen, this is what to expect. This is what's going to happen. This is everything they don't tell you, like all of the unglamorous things they don't tell you. We even had it like the trans one before me sent me pictures of like everything that was going on. I was like, good to know. And then for this other trans woman, this younger trans woman, she came to me and I just went to her house in a very safe, like consensual way. I just showed her. She wanted to see it. I was like, I'll show you.
Your body.
Yes, because she wanted to know what to expect, and she said it made her feel better because someone else is through it. So I think the community and the mentorship aspect of it was really what made my transition so much more easier. Which again is a privilege because if I was in a remote community, far away where there's no like access at all, let alone like community and mentorship, I would feel so lost. So So with our program, actually, Love Builds the Bundle. Part of it is creating a Two-Spirit Youth Council as well as a Two-Spirit Elder Council, and I do want to develop mentorship into it because it's so important.
Absolutely.
And although it's actually written for all Two-Spirit people, and it is very comprehensive and inclusive of anyone who identifies as Two-Spirit, that are Indigenous, to be able to grow in their power. But it was written with an additional lens to Indigenous girls. To Indigenous girls, because like I said, a lot of the Two-Spirit conversation gets umbrellaed with the mainstream conversation, the LGBT conversation. And that is dominated by gay men. And so I wanted to make sure that when we're creating leaders with that extra lens, we want to hold space. We really want to be that placeholder for upcoming Two-Spirit or young girls to come into their power. We want trans people, trans men, trans women to come into their power. And we really want what we need as a society is that particular voice back at the table. And so when I think about that, I think about ceremony. I think about the importance of having and walking into a world, or walking in our power to be able to contribute that we belong in ceremony, that we have our own ceremonies, and how vital it is as a society. There's another worldview that a lot of people may not know, and that is, at least in the Ojibwe culture, an Ojibwe community as well was based off of how many Agokwe and Agokwenini people they had prior to contact. That's how we viewed, right? And so I'm so grateful, one, that I got to meet you, but I'm even more grateful that I get to work with you, Kylie May, in sharing in those worldviews. But, this work for a long time felt really isolating. It has, and now that, I get to sit in spaces with you, with, the Laverne Manettes of the world, I know that we're coming back to the table. And I love that you're talking about gender journeys, because Onwa has really picked up some really big leadership roles or shoes, if you will, in beginning having those conversations. And we are now delivering our own gender journeys here. With a cultural lens. And we're currently doing a session starting, I want to say September 7th, up until So what people don't see behind the scenes is we got this really cool Jamaican woman running around with a marker and a flip chart, and she's like sticking stuff on the wall, and it's making me laugh. So October 19th to December 7th, and it's scheduled for 1 to 4 every Saturday. And to register, all you have to do is call on what caller intake, call reception. They'll get you to where you need to be to have you register. It's a really, it's a fun 3-hour session. Food's always provided, but more importantly, we're creating spaces for people to be their authentic selves. And we not only encourage you to be your authentic self, but we celebrate your authentic self. Right? So I'm really, really pumped about that.
So, yeah, and I think, and that's so beautiful to hear that that was a part of your journey, and then how we can make that again from like a cultural, like adding the nativeness to it is what makes it feel safe too. Can you folks share an example of when you say like feeling in your roles, in your purpose, like an experience where you felt culturally empowered, like where an elder said something to you, an elder gave you a task, you did something like at a traditional gathering, something where your role as who you were was recognized in a cultural way and how you experienced that. So like I think of examples of like people, some of my patients who said, yeah, well this weekend I was asked to be a firekeeper, and to me, like before, people used to tell me, oh, I can't do that because I'm not a man, but I am. And the elder said, well, no, we need people to be fired. Like logistically, we can't just like exclude. Like we need people to be able to do this. So that's an example that I often hear of like, no, that's your job. Like go do the job. So what is there anything you can think of where culturally that you felt that sense of like it just you felt it?
Yeah, actually, I've been experiencing that recently in my new role at Guna Krishna on Six Nations, because I was away for so long. Not only did I leave my community, I sort of stepped away from my culture. So I'm put in a Shimini, I went to Longhouse, and I grew up in a Longhouse family, and I despised it so much, and I didn't know why. Like before I figured out I was trans, before I realized I was a woman, my mother was getting me to do like male roles, and I was forced to do like men's ceremonies, men's songs, men's dances, and I didn't know why I hated it so much. I was like, there's something about this I just don't like. I don't want to do it, and so that for me developed a complex of like gender identity, gender roles, and culture, and longhouse and ceremony. So I went on this big journey coming back and realizing the importance of my culture, language, and traditions, and also my role within it. So now that I'm back on the reserve, I've slowly been reintroducing myself into cultural spaces, because Ganokrashra, is a cultural organization. We're Haudenosaunee, so therefore we incorporate a lot of our practices and ceremonies and songs into like our daily like meetings, things. So we had a training week last week on Six Nations, and so I got to participate in cultural teachings, and so I got to also dance women's dances, which I'd never done, because the last time I was at Longhouse, I was living as male, and I was sitting on the men's side and like doing men's songs, dances, and ceremonies. I haven't been back to Longhouse yet officially, but I've been slowly we helped out the Great Law, which the Great Law resettled at Sour Springs Longhouse on Six Nations, and so I helped there. And being there as me, Kylie, I got to see a bunch of people I knew a long time ago who knew me before, and I was so anxious and so scared for the longest time. I was like, what are people gonna think about me? They're gonna judge me. They're gonna look weird. But no, people looked at me and they remembered me, and people even came up to me and was like, hey, what's up? And I was just like, they were just like cool with it. I don't know why in my mind I built it up to be this really big thing, and they were just so accepting. So like doing women's roles, like working in the kitchen, cooking, cleaning, everything like women are expected to do, and that was so validating, just to be like included part of it, to be given responsibilities. and then to slowly start, like we had a little social at the end of our training week. So we had like traditional singers, and I danced women's shuffle dance for the first time, and that was a huge thing for me. And I was like, holy, like it was just like yes, I was like this is it, and it felt right. I was like, this is where I belong. This is what I want to do. So I forgot your question, but
It was, yeah, exactly that. When you felt, I think my question was when you felt that.
yeah,
Which is like, that's a real technical.
That's when I
but
felt
that essence of what
like
you're
I was
talking
in it. I felt aligned.
was-
I
yes,
felt like
everything.
I was where I was supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. Culturally, where like everything was just like, yep.
And
this
it was
is me.
because of culture. Like I could go to Toronto and be accepted like in the queer community, but being in my community with my people in Longhouse in that role, that was the most everything for me. So.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you have any examples, Colin, that you can think of culturally where it's like a practice or a ceremony that you did, or just something that where everything aligned?
This is just between us. Yeah.
Love, girl, why?
Prior to, she was like, I'm going to ask you questions, Colin. And you just bounce off that. And I said, yes, I'm going to answer you. Just like,
I agree. Yes, I've had those types of experiences. You're like, it's just between us. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. I'm like, wait, stop. Don't say that.
I just saw the color drain. Just like, and the cackle, the anti-cackle. Yeah, no, actually I do. Mine's a little bit different. Like I said, I grew up urban-based.
Yeah.
And that's not, it's not better, it's not less than, it's just different.
Yeah.
I think for me, that cultural piece that's something I've struggled with, especially when you're a young teenager, right? Being an urban indigenous person. I had to come to my own, make my own peace with what culture meant. And I think culture, tradition, is not what I think the traditional way people think of that in their head is. That it's something that we reach for, we strive for, that you can grab, that you can touch, that you can put, away. It's not. It took me a long time to realize being who I am, being accepting of who I am, and walking in that power, walking in the confidence of the things that make me who I am, as Colin Graham, like the cracker. Or Nigani Gabo, right? My spirit name. Walking as Nigani Gabo. Everything that I do in this life is not only rooted in culture, but everything that we do and how we walk in this life is ceremony.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to realize that.
Yeah.
And in that, I found not only my own voice, but my own purpose in realizing, regardless of wherever I'm at in my own healing journey, I'm worthy of culture because I am culture.
Yes, every day.
We are ceremony.
We are ceremony.
This is our bundle, this is our sacred space, our lodge. It's
right? We come here from the great mystery to have a human experience.
Yeah.
Anything that we project or anything that we are as a community societally is culture.
Yeah.
Right? And we are actively participating in it every day. So the moment we start excluding people from that,
we're excluding people from existence.
Exactly.
Yeah, like literally from existing. Yeah.
So again, when I always bring it back to the London, I wanted to make sure. I wanted people to really celebrate and honor who they are. I'll share another story.
All right.
I feel like I'm Sophia from the Golden Girls. Picture it.
Picture it.
I did a little bamboo purse. And a bad perm. I love it. Okay. So picture it, right? I know, I don't take myself seriously.
Stop! You killed me! Okay, I'm ready now.
Okay.
The story.
A story. Oh my goodness. This thing is going off and it's killing me.
In
Okay.
your Gucci case.
Louis Vuitton.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. My bad.
So, story.
you're on a mountain
I long to be. All right? And that would be. It's a busy day at the office,
Hi,
eh?
come into our live.
Bonjour, come on
Consequences of our
in.
actions. Just kidding.
Hi, Renegade in a long time. Okay, so if we could get the story, pride, being gay. I tried finding my space, my voice in spaces that I wanted to be a part of. And a really big part of that would be trying to find my voice in the LGBT community. And did I find that I was welcomed? 100%. As you know, doing not only this work but my own journey as a human being, it was great being in spaces that were inclusive.
Right.
Right? I remember coming into my power, recognizing that I make the decision of where I choose, or where I make the decision where I want to be in community, in work. But there are times I sit with the women because there's a part of me and a part of my spirit that wants and needs to communicate with women, to share in story, to share in those cackles, to share in the spaces that make women strong. But then there's also those days when it's time to, I'm not going to say time to war, but definitely time to stand my ground. And those times, I will stand with the men. I will stand with the elders when it's time to learn, or be given perspective and wisdom. And then there's times to learn, which is where I sit with the young people. And so I bring that up because there have been times when and it was so great to see, like how Pride went from being a protest to then becoming a party, then to becoming what it is today. And I'm grateful, I'm eternally grateful for the space and how they move towards inclusivity. What I think is important for us never to stray from is being two-spirit and being a Gokwe Nini is nothing to do with our sexuality. It has nothing to do with gender. As happy as I am as Pride or Fiancé or whoever they are, the gay powers
The
that
power of being.
right? I just see it, in my head, I just see like a black table of council where you blank faces, you don't see who they are, right? That make the good decisions.
I see a leather harness, but go
Right.
on.
And I'm grateful for them holding that space, but sometimes I've had to push back to let them know, and I think that's more of that masculine energy that comes out of me, to let the powers that be, although we appreciate the inclusivity, the space, long before Pride ever existed, my people who have a blood memory and connection to this land that go back time immemorial have always honored the Agokwe and the Agokwe Nini. And I don't need a 1-week street fair to prove my worth in existence. And as much as we appreciate, it's important to remember there has been historically the work of the people of this land long before there was ever even Pride was ever even a thought, because it was never needed.
Yeah, you didn't need a week dedicated to exactly what you said. It just was every day. You lived it.
And I keep thinking it's taking me to, I'm almost 50 now, and it's taking me this long to step into that power. Now, with this start, I see Love Builds a Bundle as a seed, as a start to walking Minapawatsoan, or that good life for those young people. I would love to see this knowledge I have now at almost 50 in the mind of someone who is 18, ready to take on the world. So.
I just like that image of that, like, and it brings me back to what your mom said, Colin, of like, I'm so glad that you get to be happy. And that also is our purpose as Anishinaabe people. Like, it's to do a lot of different things, but also our purpose and spirit is like to be happy and to have joy. And I think that gets lost in translation. And I definitely see that sense of joy and happiness and fulfillment, even in how the bundle, Love is the Bundle, is written. Like, you can feel that sense. So, I mean, joy being almost like a scarcity. Like, it's like, okay, we're just, because I think what I often hear from my patients is like a lot of it is just survival. Like, they're just trying to live day to day. There isn't time or space for joy. Like, because it's just like, I'm trying to survive my family. They hate me. I'm trying to get my hormones. I can't afford them. Like, just all of these things, and there isn't even that place, that spirit. That's your intent is like to actually be happy, to be joyful. Do you feel like, how do you embody that? How do you, when your mom said, "I want you to be happy," what did that mean for you? Like, what did that actually tangibly look like for you to be happy?
Well, for me at that point, I'm 19 and I know everything.
Yes, of course you do. You always do.
I still think I do, and clearly don't. I think what that meant for me was, in that moment, if I go back in my head at that moment, it gave me the permission to be as flamboyant, to be as masculine. It gave me the permission in the spaces with my mother to be my authentic self without wearing that mask, to be able to be not always on guard of like, Mom will never know, right? That's what that joy meant for me. It was the simplest of joy. It didn't mean planning. It didn't mean, for me it was a sigh of relief, regardless of however it went, because it may have not gone that way for me.
Yeah.
But there was that relief, and at least it was a step in me taking ownership or autonomy of myself, control of my life, to know that I could be and that I'm deserving of joy. And if I can't have it here, by hook or by crook, I'm gonna find it.
Yeah.
When I think about Love Builds the Bundle again, and I think about my life experiences, I think about, like I told you, the overall project to me is my mom's way and a ton that I'm loved, and that there are different aspects throughout my life where it's just a toolkit or a teaching or a module, but they're actually based off of real life experiences that I had that were positive for people to be able to experience themselves if they're not experiencing it in their own spaces. And why I love this toolkit, and there's, like I said, another layer to this toolkit, is the toolkit has a facilitator's guide based off of, and it's 7 lesson plans based off of the 7 grappler teachings. And it's great. It's a facilitated guide that a facilitator can go into spaces and help people rediscover who they are or get in connection with them. Even without this toolkit, even without the facilitator's guide, there is a component where there are journals for young people to have their own journal, comprehensive journal. It's not just like freelance, go for the goal here. It's an actual almost like workbook. But in comparison, or in addition to that, the parents also get one. Right? The parents also get to do that work on how to create a safer space in their home for their young person, especially if they want to try. It's about allyship. It's about love. I say that because one of the things I like, another story and example or experience I had, is after my mother told me that, right? After she told me when I first came out, about 2 years later she told me. She goes, "Remember when you came out?" I said, "Yes, and I thank you for that." And then she tells me, "I need you to know something." I said, "Okay." "What?" She goes, "I'm so honored that you shared that with me. And she goes, a part of me had to ask myself why it took you so long to tell me, right? And I think, I explained to her, media at the time, and it wasn't safe back then. It wasn't her per se. It wasn't. And then she told me some more truth. And one of the other truths she told me that day was, after you told me, she goes, and I love you. That would never change. She goes, but it took me a long time, Colin, to do my own work. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I had to grieve. I had to do my own grief work. And I'm like, what do you mean you had to do your own grief work? She goes, it has nothing to do with you, it has everything to do with me. As a mom, as a young single mom raising you, to be the man I wanted you to be. I had to grieve what I thought, a plan I wrote for you. She goes, which was a big lesson in humiliation. Not humiliation.
Maybe a little humiliation.
Humility, yes.
Humility. Wait, that word came out wrong. Humility. And it was humbling for her in the sense that as a parent, sometimes parents lay out the roadmap for their kids.
Yeah.
And not that it's wrong. Because we all do that. I do that for my niece.
This is what you're going to do on this day.
Right?
Yeah.
But then, and she goes, and that's not on you, that's on me. And I had to come to terms with, well, what does this look like with you coming out? Does this mean I'm going to have grandchildren? Does this mean that you're going to go off to some big city and leave me? Does this mean that you're going to, and forgive for the times, but does this mean you're going to get AIDS? Right? Because that was the reality back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And, so she had to do a lot of her own grief work. And in that, she came to her own terms of recognizing, again, what it meant for her, how important it was for her to say, I'm so glad you can finally be happy, but also recognizing she's a parent.
Yeah.
And being a parent, regardless of gay, straight, whatever, your children are never going to follow the roadmap that you plan out for them the moment they come into this world. So,
Cole, look at the camera and say that.
Right?
Your children are never.
Right? What's your mom's name?
Laura.
Laura, your children are never gonna.
I was probably watching like.
No, but so part of that Love Builds the Bundle is it's not just for the young people coming up. It's to also help parents recognize you're human too.
Yeah.
And we all have a responsibility to ourselves.
Yeah.
And in that sometimes is our own healing. And so there's space carved out in the parent's journal and guide to be able to recognize there's grief work to do. And grief isn't something to be scared of.
Yeah.
It's not something to shy away from. It's not bad. We need those spaces to be able to do our own work.
Yeah.
And I want to normalize grief work.
Yeah.
Holy man.
I want to normalize a lot of things.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
But really, I really never thought of it that way, to normalize the group, and also what it's like from a parent's perspective. Kind of what resonates with you?
Well, my mom, I think also, my family have been on quite a journey. Like today, they're just the most loving. My mom's ally, When I first came out as gay, that was one thing. Then I had to come out as trans later, and then by the time I came out as trans, she's like, let's have a coming out party for you. And I was like, whoa. I was like, slow your roll.
Stop you there.
Good. Thank you for the love. What were we just talking about?
So feeling like, what the heck were we just talking about, Colin?
We were talking about grief, normalizing grief.
Right.
Parents, their journey.
And I do think that is something that does need to be not only normalized but talked about more, because I feel like when it comes to people transitioning, whether you're an adult transitioning or you're a child transitioning, it's almost like people I understand like as a trans person, like it's almost like a rebirth, like you're becoming a new person, but you have to acknowledge the fact that that old person you were, like you're still the same person, but like my mom had a son, you know, and she had dreams for me, of course, she had expectations. I remember being a kid, her like trying to force me to like play lacrosse and play with the boys and do all of these things, but I just wanted to be in like gymnastics and dance and, you know, so I think she did grieve that for a while, but I think it is such an important part of, you know, transitioning is honoring where they were and honoring that person that you were and having that I don't know what you would call it, like evolution, you know, but you have to create space for that also, because if you allow that, then you can have a healthier relationship with your mother or with your family instead of just like ignoring it or pretending, you know. So it is definitely something, and I've learned something about myself along the way is honoring who I was before and who I was at every stage in my life. And so as a two-spirit person, like I hang on to my history, I hang on to, you know, I guess my origin story and who I was, because it informs who I am today, it makes me who I am today. And I don't want to erase it, I don't want to eliminate it, I'm not trying to hide it, I don't want people to forget about it, because that's who I am, that's my story, and I honor that. So, you know,
Trying.
When I think about this work, hearing your voice, that's the other thing I knew we were on the right track. Because when you joined in in phase 2 and you saw the rough draft of it,
yeah.
you made me and you get crying.
Really?
You did.
Yes. Just tell me more. Story time.
You made us cry because when you saw the journal for the very first time.
Right. I remember this.
And you talked about how the journal itself, if you had access to that journal when you were a young person, a teenager, a young tween coming up, how much that would have drastically have been changing, or how it would have changed your life for the better, right? That workbook that we had developed, and that's when Huguette and I knew what we had just produced was exactly what community needs right now. And so we were really honored to have had it, because we hadn't had the engagements back with the youth yet to show the report back. So we knew, we were like a big sigh of relief, a moment of pride in this work. But I think that relief also comes from not just meeting those deliverables, but that relief comes from there's so much of like life in this, in the actual toolkit and experiences, it validates it. So it was really great. The other thing I really, really want to highlight is I'm so, apart from being so honored to be able to have done this work of Love Builds the Bundle, and how it, you know, parallels with the work now almost picking up with Gender Journeys, which is so needed. But I really want to highlight how in time and space we're reaching a point, right? And I love it because Anwa is also doing other great work. Anwa has a clinic now, and please forgive me if I butcher this. It's Minda Moya.
You got it.
I totally got Minda Moya Health Clinic. And why this is important is when it comes to the conversation of gender affirming care, right? The conversation around gender affirming care is, one, it's not new to us as Indigenous people. It's not new. It's actually relatively been a part of our teachings since time immemorial. It's great that now that Anwa's moving into health, it's really taking that full holistic approach when it comes to women's overall health, women and their entire family's overall health. And I can't express my gratitude to even sitting in spaces with you to carry on this conversation, not only the physical piece of health, but that Love Builds a Bundle is an avenue for a family to heal together and grow together emotionally,
Yeah,
mentally,
exactly.
spiritually, but also rooted in culture, right? So I'm really proud to work for an organization that is recognizing the importance of overall holistic health.
Yeah, I notice in my role as a physician, oftentimes, like, if I'm not addressing what's around the young person in front of me, nothing I do is really helping. And so I really like that piece of like, yeah, I can do my best in that clinical encounter to like get you the referrals, get you the medications. But if the environment, mental health, to get your counselor, to find mentors, to be connected to elders, but ultimately, if the people that are around you aren't moving with you in this journey, it makes health so much more difficult. So I actually really love that of like I love when I get to work with not just people but their families. Like I'm like, no, I treat your mom, no, I treat your dad, like and we can have these conversations of like, oh well, so and so like they've been really stressing me out, and then I can do some of that education, like, hey, just so you know, like you have a really amazing child. They're right now this is what they're going through. There's some like medical things we need to consider, and I think if you're just focusing on the individual and not the system and the people and the community that's around them, then we're just putting young people back in situations that are like, well, that's great and all, but like, what else? Like, everything else needs to change. Yeah, I definitely see that a lot.
Something I'm excited for like the fuller rollout of like the website and the project is that it does, there is like the online toolkit, there is a section for facilitators and trainers, and we are, like in my role, I will be training people to do the training, but also there's the journal and the section for the youth, but also the parents. And I think it's such an important and beautiful thing to have a parent and a child go through the journey together and how bonding that is, and to be able to learn together so that it's not just you don't feel isolated as a youth. You can have your parent or your family going along with you and honoring like their feelings and where they're coming from, because it's also a journey for them, and you can grow together. I'm really excited for it, and in talking to again, like people within my organization and partner agencies, the demand is so high. The need is there, and the people are interested. Community members are interested. People want to know how to help. They just want to know what to do, and they want to do it right. So we are able to provide them something tangible that they can actually work through, like a workbook, like a journal. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it rolls out. I do think it's going to be impactful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. We are making the toolkit Love Builds the Bundle available with both journals available on our website.
Nice.
The facilitator's guide, to access the facilitator's guide, you'll have to call in to register, and we'll provide that training. The journals themselves can be used outside of the facilitator's guide. However, accompanying together, it goes through the full walkthrough lesson plan. Otherwise, this journal is very user-friendly, and it helps have those conversations with oneself and where they're at. There's a level of safety planning in there for young people. There's planning for parents on how to build a more inclusive environment at home that's safer. And with that available on website in PDF, all you have to do is download, you can print it up, and you have access to it. There's another component to our Love Builds bundle on our website, and that's where we're creating an entire other plethora of resources as to what's available in Ontario, what's in your region, with not only just services, but gender-affirming care clinics across Ontario. We recognize one of the biggest factors into people's overall health is knowledge and how to gain access to resources. So we're making that available on our website, And we're looking now, after further engagement with youth, as we brought back, is the importance of having even a clean, they call it a clean escape, if you will, in case maybe home isn't a safe environment, where they're looking at it and it's a quick button that they would just have, and it would direct it to a completely different
the safe escape button.
the safe escape button. And so I thought that was brilliant, right? Because again, that's something I haven't thought about. But the youth are telling us what they need, what they want. They want resource to not only access to resources, they want access to libraries and books and story. We're comprehensive with our toolkit and our website for that matter, to be mindful of the collective voice, which is comprised of videos, live feeds such as this one, where we're creating conversation for people to join in with us, right? Because we, like I said before, are nothing more than facilitators of change. I'm looking for those leaders. Because I want to retire.
This is transition planning. This is retirement, friends.
This is succession planning.
Okay. We need that.
I'm looking for the next Sophia.
I love that.
Are we recruiting also?
Yeah. This is supposed to be, exactly. This is also a recruitment video for folks that are interested. Well, and I think of what you mentioned about having access to care. First of all, having access to any type of care, healthcare within Ontario, within Turtle Island, is extremely difficult, let alone finding a provider. One that'll get your, simple things like change your name in the EMR so you're not being addressed by something that you aren't called anymore, or getting your pronouns correctly, or like not assuming that your care is going to look a specific way. So I know that for myself, the way, like why, even within practice of physicians, trans LGBTQ2S care is really just like not talked about, and it's really not, I don't know, it's almost like a special, like it's like, oh, this is the topic that you go over here. This is where you go and learn all of these things. And it's really unfortunate because, especially when I think about hormones, because that, for me, that's like a big access point of like, you need a physician for that. And if you don't have access to a physician, then it's just like out of reach. Not that everyone's transition includes that, but for people who want that and you don't have access to that, and something that a lot of physicians don't actually realize is they know how to do that already, because we prescribe birth control, we give hormone replacement for menopausal women, we give testosterone to men who are low on testosterone. So just this concept of like, oh, it's like over there, oh, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, we have the medical knowledge, other physicians, to be able to learn this, and it doesn't actually, it should really be a part of all primary care, like all nurse practitioners, all primary care providers should have access to this knowledge. One, and realize that they already have it. Like, you already deal with hormones, you already deal with all types of surgeries, plastic surgeries. We actually already have this knowledge. And I think so the reason why I wanted to do this specific work, so my auntie, Mona Pardiba, she recently passed away, and I know that her experience as a trans woman, as a trans elder, she was treated terribly by our family. Absolutely, and I would see that, and you could feel the hatred that would come off of our family in waves towards her, and just like slowly becoming more and more isolated. And I remember talking to my auntie Mona. She actually doesn't know this because I never really got to tell her before she passed away that a big part of this was because I saw how poorly she was treated in our family, and not having access to this, and how she literally just had to drive her way forward to exist. And that finally, when she did have access to care providers, that it made a huge difference in her life. And I think that in itself does make a difference, is having someone, one, that cares, which I'm like, why are we like hoping that providers are gonna care? Like, why is that the minimum standard? Or we're so happy if they care. And I'm like, what? If that's our bare minimum, not like that you need to be safe with like a provider, but we want someone that cares and will listen and is open to like learn. I think that's a pretty low standard for wanting your healthcare to be a specific way.
Yeah, I don't think like two-spirit trans, like two LGBTQ healthcare should be standard. It should not be specialized. It should be standardized because I remember when I first began my transition, I started out hormones. So I was in Toronto and I was going to this place called the Anishinaabe Health Toronto, and I went there and I told them I'm trans and two-spirit. I want access to hormones. And my doctor at the time just straight up told me, like, I support you on your journey, but I have absolutely no idea how to do that, and I'm kind of scared to do it, so you can go somewhere else. And I was just like, can a doctor just do that? Like just say they're uncomfortable with it because they have no experience.
Yeah.
But you make a point because yes, you can prescribe HRT to cis people.
Do
men,
it 10.
yes, exactly. And even I've had surgeons, because there's like, when it comes to surgeries, there's like facial feminization surgery. People want to make it trans specific. I had a surgeon once, not my surgeon, a surgeon, saying like basically facial procedures for cis women. He's like, it's basically facial feminization surgery. Everyone's getting facial feminization surgery. So it's really just the way you like position your perspective or your frame of mind. But I was lucky enough to be able to, it was just up the street at Sherborne Health Center, so that's where I went because they had the specialized care. But I can't imagine what it's like being somewhere where that only option was the doctor who said, I can't help you, go somewhere else.
Right, and that just, I think, adds unnecessary time and barrier to people's healthcare. Because oftentimes when I think of even young people wanting to be on puberty blockers, like time is of the essence.
It is.
When you start to develop breast tissue, when you start to develop like anything, like those secondary sex characteristics, a lot of those things is like, you can't really take that back.
It's irreversible.
So time is of the essence. So I'm like, we can't just wait around waiting for people in Toronto to come and save us and to provide the care, because like there's times where it's like, no, like it's now. One, it's urgent because it is like medically urgent versus like we want that for you and we're gonna get that for you, but like no, I treat every case very urgently. Like this had to have happened. This should have happened last month. Like the fact that we're doing this now is like time, because and I think the longer too that you're in a body or in an existence, your body and it's not matching, there's misalignment, it's not resonating, the longer that affects like your spiritual, like your spirit, your psyche, you literally, it starts to become damaging where you're just like because of that gender dysphoria. And so unfortunately gender dysphoria is a medical diagnosis. It's essentially where your gender does not align with your sex. And so in order to access even like hormones, trans surgeries, like bottom surgery, top surgery, you have to have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, which is in the DSM-5 criteria. That's a psychiatric diagnosis, which is...
And it's treated as a medical intervention.
Exactly.
Which, like, I remember when I had my surgery and I went to, like, when I was in gender journeys, like, our elders before us, like, our mentors said, this is the process you have to go through, and it's not for everybody. Because you're gonna have to check some boxes that are not comfortable and that you won't agree with, but it's what we have to do to get the care we need. And I basically had to have that, psychodiagnostic assessment saying that, I have gender identity disorder and that it needs to be fixed, and that's why, like the province has to pay for it because it's, medical intervention. But why can't it just be affirming as opposed to like fixing?
Yeah, and why do you need a psychiatric diagnosis in order to just be who you want to be?
And why do I need to wait 6 months to even see somebody, and then another period of time before I can start hormones? But that is a very important thing you said, was time is of the essence. It is urgent. Because every day I remember living in a body that wasn't mine, and it's so psychologically distressing. It's so spiritually disturbing that it has impacts, and that's what leads people to imagine being stuck in that, like the medical limbo, I guess, of red tape, waiting, assessment periods. In that period, people could lose hope, and they could develop addictions, because what they're hearing from a system is you're not important, or you have to wait, and that can be so crushing. I remember those crushing feelings of wanting to start hormones right away, but having to wait. And imagine being a young person whose body is rapidly changing every day in a direction you don't want to go to.
Exactly.
So it is urgent, and it matters tremendously.
Yeah, and I think we're doing a better job of decreasing wait times and having access, but just the fact that there's so much red tape and it takes so much time. And so parents, especially when your young child or young person in your life is telling you that they're having these feelings, that they're not, like, it's not a phase. Like, the majority of cases, because this is often parents are like, well, what if it was a phase and then we did things like puberty blockers? Once you stop taking puberty blockers, it just reverses. Anyways, so that's actually not that big of a concern. But like, what happens if they change their mind? And like, they've done studies, like retroactive studies, of how many people had top bottom surgery, did hormones, transitioned fully to a different gender, different sex. Like, the majority of like negative reactions to that was like 1% of people. That's pretty low to be like, well, someone might regret this, and like, yeah, 1% do, 99% don't.
Yeah.
And so I just, it's really mind-boggling how healthcare frames and like this othering of people, and it's really dehumanizing. To just have like, this is a separate issue. And to your point too about like, can physicians or nurse practitioners or primary care providers, can they just say like, I'm not comfortable with that? Technically, yeah, they can, but they have to be able to refer you somewhere. But I think, like, I don't think it's acceptable that any physician has any concern with doing like hormone therapy, mental health, being safe for trans, two-spirit, indigenous queer people. Like, that is not, there's no moral like, oh, that's like, that doesn't align with my values. I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
I know.
Then why are you a doctor?
It doesn't sound personal. I mean, it doesn't sound professional. It sounds personal at that point. It's just like, I don't agree with what you're doing, so I don't know.
And like, I can't do that. I don't have that. I'm like, you can do that education. Like, I just don't think there's an excuse for providers not doing that. But I get it. But I think we're slowly switching out of this. Like, you don't need specialists to have access to gender affirming care. And especially communities and remote communities, like when I work on reserve, and like, if you're the only provider there, you have to be cognizant of like, then you need to provide that. Like, then you need to get over yourself and learn and go and do the thing, because otherwise X, Y, and Z is going to need to fly all the way. It's such a huge process. So like, I really want us to also be training physicians, young Indigenous physicians, to actually like take matters into their own hands, so that when they do go to their own communities, like how you were saying, you return to your own community, like, that you have those skills, that you're a skilled individual that can provide these healthcare resources. And it's not just hormones and surgery, like, it's just simple, like, can you like be kind and caring? Can you express, and can you devote your time and your heart energy into individuals that need your assistance?
Yes, even as simple as like going to a care provider and them using your correct pronoun or name without all of that, like, but your charts. I've been, oh my gosh, I've been in rooms with like, in waiting rooms with doctors' offices, and they like come out and they did name me, and they're like, Mr. whatever, and I'm like, I'm not moving. Like, that's so horrible, and I have to get up and walk in front of people. Like, just something as simple as that. Just make it safer, make it more accessible.
Yeah.
And get over yourself.
What was the doctor's name? I'm like, listen here, doctor, you need to get over yourself. Like, it's okay, kids, I'm closer to retirement than you two. I can say those things.
Like, I still have many years to practice. Really. Well, we're getting close to the time of wrapping up. So I just wanted to thank you both for really, like, I think people watching this, people having access to this, seeing you here, hearing your words and your stories are so impactful. Like, they resonate deeply. And I'm so thankful that you took on this work. I'm grateful that you really have that vulnerability to have so much, like, because that when you're basing stuff on your own experience that is harmful, that is violent, that is like the parts of your life that were the worst parts of your life, and then taking that to create something that gives younger people behind, like, that takes a lot of vulnerability and courage to take a look at all, like, to grapple with all of that, and then create something beautiful out of it. Like, that is an extremely difficult task to do. Like I know it, and it's really taxing. But just in creating this toolkit and the amazing work that you two have done. So, any final words, any closing words about whether it's the bundle, where maybe some parting words that you have to, like, Agokwe Nene, Indigenous Queer, Two Spirit, young people who are watching this. What are some words that you would like them to hear? A message or of sorts that you want to make sure young people, like, that they're hearing, hey, in summary, this is what I need you to hear, because I want you to have better than what I had.
Would you like to speak?
Sure. I think for me, when I think about Love Builds the Bundle, is yes, although the main intended audience is for young Two-Spirit or Gokwe Nini coming up to be able to find that voice, to have that same hug I got from my mom so many years ago. I want people to know that Love Builds the Bundle is intended for everyone. That Love Builds the Bundle is a true statement in itself. Imagine what the world could look like if every child was raised in their natural inherited gifts that they come from the Great Mystery with. What would happen to all of us if we all grew up with the understanding that you matter and that your perspective on life is integral to our community's survival? What would you do if I told you that all you need in this life to build your bundle is love yourself? And that's what this project's intended to do, is to be those stepping stones to loving yourself.
Beautiful.
A message I think that I have for young people and youth and children is, you know yourself, therefore trust yourself. And a message I'll also like to always give is like a validation, is that, like, you know, you were born for a reason. You came here with gifts, as Colin said. Your life not only matters, it has a purpose, and you know who you are, and follow, you know, that you know who your authentic self is. So just trust that, trust yourself. And for, like, you know, people, family members, parents, caregivers, community members, and this is something that I like to say beyond just being a trans youth or Two-Spirit or LGBTQ, just like as parents generally, whether you're a parent or caregiver, or like you're a teacher or you're in some role where you work with children, let the child tell you who they are, because the child will show you who they are and who you want to become, or who they want to become. Because we touched on earlier how sometimes we have like plans and blueprints and pathways for our children without really giving them the input or the choice to tell you who they want to be. So in just guiding anybody through this journey, like for the youth themselves, trust yourself, and for the parents, caregivers, elders, like trust these young people. Like they know who they are, they know what they want.
It's not a phase.
It's not a phase, and it's really not your job to police them or to like shape them into a mold of a person that you think they should be or that you want them to be. Just let them become the best version of who they are. And I think so much beauty can come from that. We would have stronger nations, stronger communities, like stronger mental health. So like,
it would change the health trajectory of our entire community.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Chumi Wedge. Yeah, thank you so much to you both.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining us and hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.